Machine. Today we have a really exciting lineup of guests who are leading experts in AI and gaming. Before I introduce them, I want to give you all a quick rundown of the conversation that we will be having today. As I'm sure we all know, AI is in the midst of revolutionizing every industry, including the gaming industry. AI is enabling more immersive gameplay, improving NPCs, personalizing the gameplay experience, and even procedurally creating in-game content. With the help of AI, game developers are able to create gaming experiences that were once thought to be impossible. Today, we'll be talking about the exciting opportunities and challenges that AI presents, as well as the potential impact it could have on the future of the gaming industry. So whether you're a game developer, a player, or simply someone interested in the intersection of AI and gaming, you've come to the right place. Quick note about the format for today. We'll spend probably about 30 to 40 minutes talking about topics related to AI and gaming, and then we'll be inviting members of the audience to come up and ask some questions during the last 15 to 20 minutes. All right, with housekeeping out of the way, let's introduce our guests. So up on stage with me, we have the man who needs no introduction. Welcome, David McDonald, CEO of Altered State Machine. How are you, David?
Good. How are you?
Doing excellent. Really excited to be doing these. This will be a lot of fun.
It's our first one. I love that. Probably my favorite topic to speak about. So I'm glad this one won out in the polls. But looking forward to doing many more of these. I see we've got some pretty heavy-hitting guests. So for once, I might not be the one doing all the talking.
We do. I'm very excited with the guests we have today. And I'll actually kick it off to the next guest. So next up, we have one of ASM's lead game designers, Jerome Kelsey. Jerome has over 2 decades of experience in game design and is also a Web3 entrepreneur working on DAOs and DAO tooling. Thanks for being here with us today, Jerome.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is really exciting. It's also a favorite topic of mine, so really keen to get started.
Awesome. And last but not least, hide your fluffs, hide your brains, because we've got the amazing Boomer with us today. Boomer is the co-founder and co-CEO of Life Force Games. Welcome, Boomer.
GM, how's everyone doing? Thanks for inviting me.
Good. How are you doing today?
Good. Excited to be chatting about this, and definitely hide your fluffs.
There will be no sweeping going on during the spaces.
No. You have my full attention for an hour, but after that, no promises.
Awesome. I'm going to start you guys off with an easy one, or maybe a not so easy one. But if you all can pick only one game, what is your favorite game of all time?
Oh man, that is not so easy. That is depends on the day that you ask me, or how nostalgic I'm feeling. God, just one game. I mean, something like Final Fantasy X's got to be up there for me.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah. Or going back in time and some of the original games that I played as a kid on the Amiga. Things like Outrun, Lotus Turbo Challenge, Switchblade, Blues Brothers. Man, the list could go on. But if I had to choose one, and then everything in between. If it was just one, it's got. I mean, the first one that came to my head was Final Fantasy X, so I've got to go with that.
That's a good choice. What about you, Boomer?
That's a tough one, because you've got really amazing games that you play and you enjoy and you remember fondly, and then you've got games that you've sunk hundreds of thousands, probably, of hours into.
World of Warcraft. Yeah.
Yeah, World of Warcraft kind of ranks up there for lots of hours played in that game. I would say, like, single player, which it's not a single player game, but game that I enjoy just playing by myself, actually, is New Zealand company Path of Exile, run by Grinding Gear Games. Yep. Super fun game. I've played years of that. And I'd say multiplayer, just fondly remembering Halo and the whole Halo series, playing with a bunch of friends and enjoying that.
Nice. Yeah, Halo's up there for me. What about you, Jerome?
Oh, it's a tough one as well. I change all the time. I would probably have to gravitate towards the Zelda franchise. And if I had to pick one to be on a desert island and I didn't have any internet connection, I'd probably choose the 3DS Link Between Worlds. I think that's a master class in game design. And you can just extract so much value from that game.
Awesome.
Oh, good choices.
Yeah, I just started Breath of the Wild, so I'm with you on Zelda. All right, so if any of you recall, what was your first experience of encountering AI in games? Is there anything about that experience that sticks out to any of you?
I think, well, let's break this down into what we're talking about when we're talking about AI in games, because AI comes in many different shapes and sizes, and it's been deployed in games in many different shapes and sizes since the history of and diffusion models and whatnot. Did I lose you guys there for a second? Somebody was trying to call me.
Yeah, I think we might have lost you there for a second.
Sorry.
I wasn't sure if it was me or not.
No. Anyway, so I was saying AI comes in many different shapes and sizes. Older state machine, where if you look at something like the FIFA game in Aether, and some of the other upcoming games that we've got coming out, they predominantly employ something so small neural network files, and as far as encountering this that style of AI goes in games, the first time I ever seen something like that would have been Lionhead Studios' Black and White, and that's probably a couple of decades ago now. But if you're talking about other types of sort of machine learning, then you can look at things like Forza Motorsports have been employing that for their driver task system, and you've seen it pop up sort of sparsely every now and then amongst games. But then AI in general, as I was saying, it covers a wide range of topics. So an AI can be as simple as a decision tree. So if this, then that. That is considered an AI in games. So that's kind of been around since the beginning. And then if you take it right back and you look at specifically machine learning, then you can go back as far as 1952 to see examples of machine learning in games, with stuff that like Arthur Samuel was doing with his checkers game. So the history has been interesting, but the thing that kind of inspired me was that nobody had really tapped into building games around the concept and around the features of specifically machine learning AI. And as I said, I've seen a glimpse of it in things like Black and White, but for the most part, the features that that machine learning create are things that game designers find difficult to incorporate into traditional games because they're not predictable. And my kind of hypothesis on it was that that's actually a good thing. Let's lean into that and create games around some of these features of machine learning, and create a completely different genre of game. Now I know Jerome's probably got some really interesting comments on this as being a game designer for 2 decades and has worked across traditional AI all the way through to now what we're doing with Altered State Machine.
Yeah, I would have to say, like, if I'm thinking about my first encounters of AI, it's along the lines of traditional game AI, the decision tree model that David's talking about. I think that's what most people are familiar with when they think about AI in games, because that's what we've been encountering for quite a long time. And my first realization that there is something akin to AI in a game was Peter Molyneux's earlier title before Black and White, and that's Populous. When I was playing that, I played many games before, but I didn't really realize that the NPCs had their own potential agency in a way, or at least a simulation of agency. And so, playing Populous, it kind of gave me this. You're not directly controlling any of those little guys on the field. You're influencing them indirectly, and they kind of had their own little minds of their own, and they may not do what you expect them to do at certain times, and you have to kind of semi-guide them. So it gave that kind of, I would say, the feeling of what these machine learning games are capable of well before we really got to start playing with them. And then in terms of machine learning games, I wouldn't say it's anything that I've encountered directly, but I've been watching things like AlphaGo and all of the, AlphaStar and the recent headways into leveraging machine learning to have actual agents play games at a high level, even beyond a human level. So that's probably the initial encounter for me.
Yeah, I was actually going to say, we have seen, where there's, player analytics and things like that, where there's kind of like unsupervised type learning all the way through, where Google's DeepMind, and this is where I was going to go with Jerome here, is AlphaStar, right? They created this bot that I think it was like 2018 or 2019, and with the goal of setting out to be the world's best player, and it actually achieved Grandmaster within that year, which is really insane to think about. And it just following along and seeing how playing against humans wasn't enough. It actually trained against playing it, against itself in the AlphaStar League, and just following that, I think, was my first real oh shit moment. Like, this is pretty cool stuff, and really excited to see where that machine learning goes.
Awesome. Yeah, those are all really good answers. So that kind of takes me into the next question I have for you, which is the way games are being built. We're already kind of seeing this change at a rapid rate with AI developments, right? So from NPCs to world building, chat features, character generation. I'll start with you, Boomer, because I want to ask specifically. So when you started Lifeforce Games, did you plan to use AI a lot to aid you in building out your games? And has that changed at all over the last year or so with kind of all these tools being released to the public and developments being made on them?
Yeah, so Lifeforce Games, we're trying to allow anyone to build their own games and have ownership over that, right? So it's a no-code, drag-and-drop game generator, and we have our own games that we're using those generators to kind of showcase what's possible. And inside of there, we're even looking at how players can actively train their own type of model and then kind of give it to their own enemy AIs within the game, and been exploring that. And then the whole ASM and finding that whole ecosystem has just gotten me so excited for where I think gaming is going. And that's why we own a ton of Brains and Boss and Primes. And I don't know, David's got a lot of my money over there, so I'm excited to see what he creates and the team keeps going with. But even just things that you don't think about. So like, I think the two guys here are going to talk a lot about like in-game, like NPC, enemy, AI, all that kind of stuff. But like things that you don't necessarily think about, how one of our things that we're doing, like our chief art officer, Sebastian, is using a combination of ChatGPT and Stable Diffusion to help with ideation. And he kind of treats it like it's its own colleague sitting next to him, right? He gives some inputs and some questions through ChatGPT. He's pulling those prompts, working with Stable Diffusion and redefining what those prompts are, pulling it out using Photoshop, and it helps him start kind of the initial ideation of what a biome might be in our in our story, in our narrative piece. And that's just like a really interesting way that some of the even consumer facing tools are changing gaming. We're starting to see people building on top of things like Stable Diffusion from an art standpoint that I think are being targeted right now to game developers. The first one that kind of comes to mind is Leonardo, where they're basically creating a really pretty menu and then saying, "Hey, but we'll remember what you're building and what you're working on," and you can start kind of defining your own model. It's fascinating where this is going, and it's really only been in this past year that it's gaining a ton of steam. But there's so many things that AI can do, right? Texture upscaling and even quality assurance, cheat detection. I think everyone's probably familiar with some cheat detection, but I'm just thinking of like the Overwatch program for CSGO has had deep learning since like 2018 or something like that. And it's been learning with human reporting and then coming back and actually it's more accurate now than the humans reporting cheaters by like multiples. So there's so many cool things coming.
Yeah,
I think
quality
they're just.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's a massive part as well. I think that kind of just highlights that I don't think there's any genre or type of game or even process to create games that's going to be exempt from disruption from AI. I think all types of games you're going to start to see AI incorporated either in their design or in the gameplay itself. And the thing that excites me is not the games and the types of games that we're aware of now being disrupted by AI. It's the new types and new genres of games that never existed before. They're going to be enabled through AI, and that's the stuff that I'm really focused on.
And what types of games do you foresee that being? Like, what are some examples of that?
I mean, a good example of that, something that's live in users' hands right now, is FIFA, FIFA AI League, because that's kind of a new type of asynchronous multiplayer. So the idea is that you set up these agents and you can train them or tweak them in a way that you want, and then put them out there for people to interact with while you're not there. So I think that's a really interesting use, is having asynchronous multiplayer, and that can be expanded out to things like NPCs and worlds and bleed into other genres where your agents that you manage can act on your behalf and do the things that you sort of hope that they would do in your absence, which I think is a really interesting area to explore.
Yeah, that's really... Oh, go ahead, Jerome. Were you about to say something?
Oh, I was just going to add to what David's saying. Like it almost feels like you're building a Tamagotchi that actually has a brain, and you can send it out to go do stuff, to play different games and seek new challenges and start to excel at those challenges, and sometimes actually surprise you. Like, that's one of the fascinating aspects of machine learning games, or at least this new genre that we're exploring, is that you get the surprise from the agents. It's why like the anti-cheat methods work so well, is because the agents can find exploits that the game designers or the testers or the developers never considered. And so you can have these agents run through the game, find all these exploits. You can patch those exploits, or you can maybe leverage those exploits to create new gameplay scenarios. And that's where I think this new genre is really exciting.
Actually, you see this, and I don't know how much of our audience has been playing the FIFA game. This is one of the really interesting results that we've seen, that I've seen the agents do. So when they get into a corner of the field, they can waste a lot of time in there going back and forth and tackling and that basically wastes the match for them. So the behavior we observe them doing is that they'll purposely kick the ball out of the arena, they found an exploit to kick the ball out of the arena, so it gets reset to the center of the pitch, and then they can continue the game faster, because it's not in their best interest to get caught in those gridlocks in the corners where all the players are huddled together, because nothing happens, they can't score a goal. So you'll see this frequently happen in the live games, and that's not something that we programmed them to do. It's something that you might, as a game designer, Jerome, you might actually program something into a system like that into the game that it gets reset to the center of the field. But the AI themselves in this instance figured that out, and they do that, which is really interesting behavior to see.
Yeah, I think you can leverage that stuff, or you can patch it, or you can do a bit of combination. There's so many different interesting possibilities that this enables for gameplay. And it gives a lot of life to the game. It makes the games more lively and unexpected, and surprises to be found here and there by the players.
Yeah, that is super fascinating. They kind of discover that all on their own. A question, I guess, for you, Jerome, is what are some of the biggest challenges in developing AI for games, as far as game design goes?
I think it's really wrapping your head around this new genre. It's not traditional like a lot of other games. You don't necessarily create gameplay systems that you can fully expect are going to work as you imagined. So you put out a kind of hypothesis, and then you have to test it and start working bit by bit to build out this hypothesis and make sure that what you think is going to happen is actually what's going to happen. And then you have to, reassess it and tweak it to start to move it in directions where you're hoping to create some sort of experience for the players. And to do so, you really have to dig into like all of the various bespoke and unique components of machine learning. Like, there's the observations of the agent, there's the reward and penalty system, there's the concept of an episode, the memory tree. And like, as a game designer, it's important to start wrapping your head around what those mean and how you can leverage them in interesting ways to create experiences from that, instead of just designing a game that you're not designing a game for an agent necessarily to play. You're designing a system that leverages these unique machine learning aspects to create a whole new experience. And that's the challenging part, I would say.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm going to ask Boomer, I'm going to ask you the same question, because I think you have a little bit maybe of a different perspective on this one. So what are big challenges for LifeForce Games and kind of incorporating AI and using that for, I guess, your workflow?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest one is, the resources for some of this are extensive, right? The compute power, just the sheer data needed, the expertise, finding that expertise that's also comfortable with Web3. I think that's across the board, not just in this though. I think understanding that, like, when you're creating games, like games go through like a crap ton of design changes, especially early on. And so trying to institute this super early will yield really crappy results. Because if there's a restriction you need to put in place or some undesired behavior is presented, you have to change the restriction or alter it, and that means that you have to train everything all over again. And it's just tough to get it in the game production pipeline, right? Like, designers, most people just aren't trained in this stuff. It's still I think, relatively niche. That comes back to, I think, resources being extensive, like just finding the expertise in this with people that are knowledgeable, comfortable, and building these components. And we're just building a very, very small subset. We're not taking on anything related to like the size that ASM is taking on.
Yeah, I 100% agree with your assessment there. I mean, we're very lucky with people like Jerome has come on board, and we've gone through some game designers before we were lucky enough to find Jerome, and getting that right combination of understanding, willingness to learn and explore a new system in an unbiased manner, understanding of the Web3 space, and also, you know, the experience of all that hard-fought experience of designing games that a good seasoned game designer has is a difficult combination to come across. I can tell you that now. So if anybody hiring for this space right now, keep your hands off Jerome. I will fight you.
Well, I really appreciate that, David. Hopefully I don't get a bunch of pings in my inbox now.
Jerome's DMs are officially closed.
I'll just go delete that DM right now.
That leads me to go ahead, Jerome. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something, like what Boomer was speaking about expertise. That's one thing we're doing with ASM, is we're putting together examples of this, and the whole open philosophy of providing this for the community to share and expand upon is, deep in our cultural DNA. And so we're hoping to not just make games for our own efforts, but spearhead this whole genre and, extend it out to other partners like Boomer as well.
Because it is hard. Like you touched on some of the stuff there about compute power. That's a massive hurdle to get over. We can't have 1 million people playing a game out there if it takes $1,000 a day worth of GPU compute power to run per user, or something ridiculous like that. So part of the challenge that Jerome has and the rest of the team has around architecting these games is to make them as lightweight as possible, strip down the decisions that the AI has to make down to the bare minimum amount of decisions, and strip away all the stuff that AI doesn't need to care about. Because you think, it needs to make a strategic decision about an event that's happening. So you basically distill it down to the bare amount of information it needs to make that decision, and the bare amount of information it needs to transmit about the decision that is made, and then you can start to get scalable AI for these kinds of things. And that is the real big challenge that the team has. You can make these things super complex. You can do the game in real time and have real-time image processing of what's going on the screen, and then these massive deep learning models working on it and reacting in real time, and that will cost you $1,000 an hour worth of compute time, or you can strip it down to the bare minimum and get exactly the same result out of it. Because at the end of the day, the AI doesn't just needs its inputs, and it needs its outputs, and everything else is just garbage that you have to get rid of.
Yeah, I agree. That is a very big challenge that we have to face all the time. I think it's about knowing your constraints. At the dawn of the video game industry, if somebody wanted to make, Zelda or World of Warcraft or Black and White back then, they wouldn't have been able to. They had to work within their constraints. But we got a lot of classics out of game developers working within their constraints, like Pac-Man and Space Invaders. They weren't trying to be what they couldn't be, but they are still great games in their own right.
Was that that's an interesting topic on its own. Is it's a phenomenon in art as well. As if you can paint anything in the world, then you end up painting nothing, right? So a lot of things that what artists do is that they give themselves some artificial constraints, like, okay, I need to paint fruit in a bowl today, and then that gives them some rails to play with it, and you can and try and be creative within those rails. And there's techniques where they really restrict themselves down to a very narrow set of parameters that they can play with, and see how creative with those parameters that they can be. And I think game design is exactly the same. You've seen some of the most brilliant games in the world only happened because the hardware was not capable of doing anything else. Like, you look at Doom, right? That's a beautiful piece of code that they wrote, and they had to write it in that way and create brand new systems that never existed because hardware was just simply not capable at the time. And then we get this, incredible game Doom, which started an entire genre of games. We wouldn't have the FPS genre without the constraints that the team behind Doom had to live within to create what they wanted to create.
Yeah.
So often it's the constraints that inspire creativity.
Before I continue, a quick word from our sponsors that make the show possible.
Introducing Fraz Cola, the world's premier beer-flavored beverage.
It's Fraz, delicious, highly nutritious with a top-secret recipe that's so delicious.
Nothing beats the buzz of a cool Fraz Cola. What are you waiting for?
We're getting Fraz to the Nas.
Consume at your own risk. Symptoms may include and death.
And then pushing beyond those constraints is what brings it to the next level. So we're at a unique point where we are constrained at the moment. Not everybody has a supercomputer, at the level of Google in their home, but maybe one day they will. And by that point, all of our various machine learning techniques plus increased hardware will, or capacity for hardware, will allow us to push beyond these and create all sorts of interesting games that move beyond these early attempts.
And we're doing research specifically on the assumption that just like now we're all walking around with literally supercomputers in our pockets. That's not even an exaggeration. You go back 20 years ago, what you got in your pockets would be a supercomputer. We're walking around the assumption that that in the future, computing technology is going to get better, hardware is going to get better, and doing research based off that right now. What does this look like in 5 or 10 years when hardware is at a point that we can't conceive right now? Where technologies like quantum computing and even some of the research done around analog computing have become a bit more mainstream, where data transmission rates, wireless data transmission rates are at a level where we can very easily send and receive tens of gigabytes per second. What is the future of this kind of technology and software look like in that environment? And what research can we do now to make sure that we're ahead of the game when that does happen?
And what research can AI do to help accelerate even all of that? Designing new hardware, designing new machine learning techniques, helping us expand it faster.
Yeah, it certainly feels like we're hitting the exponential age of all of this technology, which actually kind of brings me to my next question, which is potentially for all of the aspiring people looking to get into AI or use AI in their games. What kind of skill sets and knowledge are helpful for developers to have in order to effectively use AI for gaming?
Depends on what you're developing. There's roles for all sorts of skills across the board. There's no sort of one silver bullet for an engineer you're looking for to work on an AI project. We need everybody from back end to front end, to data scientists, to specific specialties in machine learning, mathematicians, designers, game developers that have worked with sort of complex AI systems, game developers who are specialize in asset bundles, like and locomotion systems. And I don't think there's one silver bullet. I think if you're coming into the space and you're interested in it and you have a particular set of skills, I think the one thing that you can bring with you is just a willingness to learn about and think about things in a different way. Because as Jerome was saying, it's I watched Jerome on his journey as he came on board and started thinking about machine learning in different ways, and being able to see those aha moments in his eyes over Zoom. I think at the time before he was back in New Zealand. Where I suddenly seen him click, that this is a new way of thinking about how you would design that system previously. So you've got to be really open to kind of destroying what you think you know about how games are made and designed or worked on, and then be really open to exploring new systems and new ways of doing it.
Yeah, I would say, like, I mean, this is beyond, this is more like soft skills, but curiosity, flexibility, and the ability to constantly check your assumptions is key, in my opinion.
I'll go the other way, and since you guys gave awesome answers, I think a new title maybe called like AI Whisperer or something will end up coming.
That's awesome.
Those who can be like prompt engineers, those who have a really good command of the English language and can figure out how to speak effectively to these, I think is going to be no code required, right? But I think it's going to be probably something that's in demand for those that can't achieve the same outcomes as they can when speaking to these.
I think this is, I want to maybe just drill down into this idea of prompt engineers for a little bit, because this is such a fascinating emergent role that never existed until now. And I think people are literally being hired as prompt engineers today. And this is really fascinating. So I have a hypothesis on this, that the prompt engineer job, as described, is going to be disrupted soon.
That was short-lived.
Because I think AI is going to get so good at knowing you on an individual level, that you don't need someone to translate your ideas anymore. That the AI, you can speak to it in your shitty English my shitty English that I have, and it will know exactly what you're talking about. And you're not going to need this middleman anymore. That's my guess on it, and it's just a guess. But I'm open to opening this can of worms.
We can go further than that. I mean, what if it starts making games or music or art that it just knows that you like?
Yeah.
I mean, we're looking at machine learning to it's starting to take the data from people's dreams and or thoughts and put images to it, as well as dreams. I mean, imagine you've got like an AI that can record your dreams and make, the music for your next day or a game for your next day, and it's going to exactly fit what your mood is that you don't even know that you have.
Yeah, that was actually interesting. I seen that that quite a few years ago that people it wasn't in Japan. Some scientists were we're starting to visualize people's dreams, and they were using AI back then, but that was long before we had the quality of AI that we have now. And I'm assuming that somebody's either reopened that research, or that research is now using some of the more modern day tools.
It is,
to do it. Oh man, that would be, because back then it was still pretty damn good. You could tell that it was a dog or something that they were dreaming about. You couldn't really see it, but you're like, oh, that kind of looks like a dog.
Well,
now,
just imagine you recreate it in 3D and you can walk through your dream and slow it down and examine it, and the AI can tell you what the symbology means, and you got virtual Carl Jung describing your dreams for you in your virtual dream.
Yeah, that's crazy. Where's your prompt engineer then?
So you're
my question.
Like the hyper personalized approach to this, and over time, and even probably short time, I could see that. But take it a different way. Like I'm like most excited for like AI art generation, and I know like you guys are working on it, Stable Diffusion's working on it. But if I can come in that doesn't need to know me personally, right? Maybe it knows my types or whatever. But if I'm saying, hey, I really want a 2-story building that's pink with 9 windows and a blue roof in low poly, right? A prompt engineer is probably going to give a better description of exactly what they want. Someone who's also probably familiar with art and its creation, and having that output come in, because I'm looking at it from like Life Force games, like game generator, you'd instantly have utility dropping that art into a game that you're creating and being able to publish it. But that doesn't need to be hyper personalized to me. Like I still think that that's going to take not necessarily a highly specialized like prompt engineer, but I think the people that are more versed in that exact thing are going to come up with a better result than those that aren't.
I certainly agree now. Yeah.
Have you played around with getting ChatGPT to write your prompts? Because you can put in like a less fidelity prompt, and you can actually get some pretty interesting outputs sometimes.
Yeah, Sebastian on our team like uses this stuff like daily, just like I said, kind of with ideation and getting kind of instant feedback. But we did a fun test between him and I, and my prompts were not nearly as effective as his when trying to go through it and create similar images in Midjourney and Stable Diffusion. So I still think that at least now, and probably for a short period of time, the ones that can create these beautiful prompts and know how to speak to the systems are going to excel faster than
I agree.
Those like me that don't
for the short term.
Correctly. For the short term, at least.
And they're about to be disrupted.
Yeah. It's a good training, actually. Like we were talking about what skills you need to get into this field. Just playing around with Midjourney or ChatGPT gives you a feel for what you need to do and how it all works. So I think it's a good beginning space to start having people, think like, how do you guide this AI? Because that's what our games are also trying to do. How do you guide these AIs? And so when you get a bit of a sense for it, it opens up a lot of possibilities in your mind.
Agreed.
That's really interesting. So if everyone starts using the same tools to help create their prompts and create, I guess, at least concepts for their art or their game design, how do we avoid a situation where all of it becomes homogenized and looking very similar?
Sorry, I missed that little bit there at the end.
Oops, sorry about that. I said if everyone, let's say, game development goes in the way that we all think, where AI is used to create a lot of it, how do we avoid a situation where everything being created is homogenized because everyone's using the same type of tooling?
Well, we're already starting to see that. So you can see kind of a distinct, and then people are starting to see like a distinct style come from these AI. So particularly the art stuff. There's kind of a consistent style that comes through in a lot of the art that's created. And I think that just comes down to training sets and some of those constraints that you give your AI to work within. And I would imagine that kit bag that the AIs have to draw from is going to expand over time and make things a lot less homogenized. But it is a concern, and that's where I think personalized, more personalized AI is going to sort of come in and disrupt that a little bit. And you're starting to see it with how ChatGPT works. I mean, it's aware of your previous conversations. It's getting to know you and your style. And we'll probably see more of that happen. And it's of course, the mission of Altered State Machine is to drive forward the personalization of AI as long as you get to own that personalization, as long as you're the owner and benefiter of that. Of the personal data it's taking from you to learn about you, that you have control over that. And our intention with that is to make it so that you can personalize these AIs. And then you look to tools, things that we use to sort of fight against homogenization of the AI, as things like the genome matrices in the Altered State Machine brain. So specifically there to create that random noise that is consistent between experiences, but still makes absolute sure that your AI and its results are 100% unique, and you're not just getting this homogenization of results at the end of the day, because AI has a tendency to want to do that, in my experience.
Yeah, actually, I think it's like there's potentially a role for, individual human creators and artists still, and you might end up seeing something, down the line.
Are you there?
Yeah, I had a call come in. Sorry. Down the line, you might start to see, a renewed role for innovative artists who are pushing beyond the homogeny, and it might be a lot of these the opportunities for some of them may come from helping push the limits of AI. So they might be being paid to create innovative art, innovative music, innovative games that we're not seeing come from the AI.
This is a really interesting point, and I'm just going to double click on that a little bit. It's been something that I've been thinking about for a while, because just like industry has replaced a lot of roles that existed before that no longer exist. AI is going to be doing the same thing. I think there's no doubt about that. But I think we as a society have to look at how we're going to deal with the fallout of that happening. And I think it presents some really interesting opportunities. If you look to places like Japan, for example, where they have a really big and revered artisan culture, the art of a human making something and the time and care that they put into making things is really revered in that culture, and people find a lot of when New Zealand would say the word mana, but what would that be? Is it anybody who can translate Kiwi?
Well, it's like the art of the craft. It's like the appreciation for the craft that you're trying to get at. I think I'm not sure what the word would be though.
So I don't know how to translate that into.
I bet the Japanese have a word
New
for
Zealander. That. Yeah. But anyway, it's I think looking to what those sorts of industries. Yes, you can get a mass-produced paintbrush and it's perfect, or you can have this thousands of year old craft that was handed down by word of mouth from generation to generation, and this person that spends months on end specifically crafting it, and that's meaningful in a way. And I think we're going to start to see maybe similar stuff with humans, where you got your mass-produced stuff that's done by AI, but then you've got this artisan made by human, stamp on it, made by a genuine human, which people, I think, will find value in pursuing, and people will find value in owning those things, and but as a society, we've really got to build up that culture around artisan work that humans do, because it's not about just manufacturing the most amount of stuff you can for cheapest anymore. We've got to really look to the things that humans are good at and appreciate, and that's the art behind creation.
Yeah, and pushing the boundaries, I think, too. Like, humans are still pretty good at that. It's hard. I mean, we're not sure how well AI will really push the boundaries. It's yet to be seen. You might need, general AI to start doing that, and who knows what that entails. But I can see the craft. The craft of actual work being done by a human gaining value in certain circles. And you might even find that those artists are only willing to, exchange that art with somebody who's going to honor it. And then you might end up having situations where people who are pushing the envelope in an artistic sense are, out of the digital realm. And if OpenAI wants to leverage those artists, they might have to pay a big premium to get those artists to release their works in any digital capacity.
Yeah.
Not to cut you guys off, because this has been amazing, but we've got about 5 minutes left, and I want to try and bring a couple speakers up for questions. So first up, we've got No Credits. No Credits?
Hey, team. Hey, David, you just touched on a really interesting subject with the idea of AI learning me individually. How does that translate to owning, say, a brain that I've worked on and I've trained and I've developed? Like, what happens when I sell that? Does the new owner then, does that brain change on ownership when it, with the new form of training? Like, how does that work from your point of view?
I think you've got to look at them as two different things. So the brains are there specifically to be used in use cases where you need strong diversity drivers, and it's not necessarily the underlying thing that captures your personality. It more translates your personal data into a result. So it's a conduit more than it is a container. I think you'll find the container is something more like your future pass, your wallet, the thing, your identity, and the brains are not there to hold the data about you as a person and your identity. That is there as a conduit to translate it into the game or in the environment that you're working in. So maybe try and separate those two things from each other.
Yeah, that's mind blown. Thank you.
All good. You there, Brian?
Hello. Yep.
Yeah,
right now,
cool.
We've got Matt Fire coming up on stage. Matt, you there?
Yeah, I'm here, guys. Amazing. Thank you all for taking the time to just kind of share with us all this. It's so exciting. I've always said that when I found out about ASM, I always felt like, first off, getting into blockchain technology, I didn't know anything, and it was like rabbit hole. I was so curious and just found it so exciting. Then when I found ASM and thought about AI and gaming, it was like, oh my God, it's like the cutting edge of the cutting edge. Like, it's just, I just believe very strongly in it. I'm helping with some other friends. We're building Dim.City. It's basically an RPG. And so we're very excited in having like AI, what we call Dream Masters, Dungeon Masters, if you will. And we think that there's a lot of, with the NPC front, a lot of like shared experience healing that could come from all of this using this technology. Like, it's really exciting to think about that kind of thing. And also just a little background on like gaming for me. Because at first I was like, okay, AI gaming, if I own a character and I'm watching that character develop, like, what's there? How exciting would that be? I used to play 2K, NBA 2K. I still do a little, but I got to the point where my favorite thing was building teams and like basically 20 seasons out where it'd be all created characters and nobody that was still in the NBA. And what was really cool is I found myself more just like watching and becoming such a fan, and the stats were so exciting, and that all is like, it just makes me have that much more conviction in like Next Legends and AFA and all of this, and how all that stats part of it is super exciting. So it's not much of a question as much of a like passionate thank you. And I don't know if you guys have anything to build off of that. By the way, I'm over in Maui. I'm never able to make the calls, but I listen to all of them, the YouTube calls and stuff.
I appreciate that. And you know, I think you touched on some of the stuff that I really love about this new genre of AI gaming, that, you know, the specific Altered State Machine flavor of it is that I get passionate about those games for the same reasons that you've described. Like, I love playing 2K for creating the team and then and being more of an observer to this world that I'm constructing, rather than mashing the buttons. You know, I get relatively good at it. I'm never going to be a pro player. I don't play online too much for that reason, because I just get crushed. But the thing that I do enjoy about those games was that exact aspect. And I kind of seen that, and I was like, there's a market for games that lean more into that side of things than it leans into having the best reaction times. I mean, I'm 37 years old now. I don't have the world's greatest reaction times. I can't play games like Dota 2 like I used to be able to play Dota back in the day, or Counter-Strike like I used to be able to in my teens. But there is a new genre of games that I can play and can excel at, and that's ones where I'm thinking about things ahead of time, and I'm training up an agent to act on my behalf using my experience. And that's what kind of got me excited about some of the stuff that we're starting to create, is creating a new genre of games where the barrier to entry is lower. You don't have to have, you know, world-class reaction times to be competitive in these games. And that opens up to a whole new audience that might want to play highly competitive games, but don't have that, you know, 1 million clicks per second reaction time to play games at a high level. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of audiences we attract with what we're going on. But I can tell you what, the FIFA test, the recent closed beta, has been illuminating and very validating of a lot of the hypotheses that we initially had when we started Altered State Machine.
Awesome. And we are getting to time, so I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Do we want to call it? One more question? How are we feeling?
Let me just check my calendar 1 sec. Yeah, can do some more questions if everybody else is all right.
Yeah, all good here.
Cool. Awesome. Then I am pulling up Mometa. 1 sec. Mometa, welcome to the stage.
Thanks for having me. Now, Peter Molyneux was mentioned numerous times during this conversation, as he should be, revolutionary. Now, he's currently working with Gala Games, his Studio Toucans. They've got 53 games under development at the moment for Web3 for their own Layer 1. I'm just curious as to, that's an incredible opportunity if they could offer Altered State Machine for every one of these studios or even their internal games that are building on their new platform. I'm just curious as to where through the development stage of ASM at the moment are we from being able to offer this to a broader development stage of studios rather than just partnering with these huge AI nuanced relationships that we have going at the moment?
Probably not too far. We're just in the middle of doing the launch plan for some of our first community developer tools to be coming out. I think the plan around those is to get them into hands of indie developers as soon as possible, get some testing done, develop on those tools and get them up to that level where they can be used by studios in a professional manner. And we're just at the beginning of that roadmap now, where we will have the first sort of alpha versions out there for people to play around with, and we can start refining it from there. So it's definitely in our longer term plans. In the meantime, we're developing the platform and developing the tools by eating our own dog food, by developing our own applications, learning those important lessons along the way. And then by the end of that process, we should have a pretty well polished product that people can start incorporating in their AAA titles.
Great, thanks, David. And also, Boom and Jerome, this is a really nice format compared to the normal AMA, which is just basically announcements and an alpha hunt, where this has been far more of a conversation. So please do more of these, guys. It's been great.
Agreed. Thanks, man.
Yeah, thanks.
Appreciate that, Mometa. I guess this will be the chance. Anyone have any last words? If not, I'll give you one last prompt. If you had a prediction for the wildest thing you might think we see with AI in the next few years, what is it?
Chip. The wildest thing we might see. I think I'm just going to draw on some of the research that we're doing with a lot of people with PhD in their titles are working on an altered state machine. As research around AI creating things that are hard today, creating them in real time. As you're experiencing them. Things that take years to develop right now are going to be created in real time as you experience them. That's my prediction.
Awesome. Jerome, any parting words or thoughts on that?
Well, I think I covered it earlier when I said that you might be able to dream a game and play it the next day. So I'm not sure how far away that actually is, but
it's conceivable, though, right?
Yeah, we've got some of the pieces for sure. And then I guess general AI, if we actually get real intelligence, that's a whole different kettle of fish. Yeah. we're who knows what we're going to face on that front.
Agreed.
Awesome. And Boomer, anything from you?
I mean, if I listen to Elon, I'm terrified at what's coming. I'm not really good at these massive prediction stuff, but I think it's going to be that every business, in order to be competitive, is going to have some sort of AI, whatever you want to call it, ChatGPT kind of functionality that walks users through every step of their business on the public-facing side. And if you don't have that, you will not be successful because everyone else will have it.
I wouldn't worry too much about what Elon says about artificial intelligence.
I'm just messing.
It's incredibly hard to get an AI to do what you want it to do, and unless you specifically want it to take over the world, give it those incentives to do so and the inputs and the outputs in order to do so. And even if you did do that, I think it would still find a very difficult task.
I heard
You'd have a
Beetlejuice. We
bit of
say
AI.
Elon 3 times in a Spaces, he shows up. So
All right, that's
he's got
it.
our 3 now.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like the TLDR is we all going to make it. So with that, I want to thank all of our guests for their time. Thank you, everyone, for showing up, for those who came up on stage, and we look forward to doing this again with you guys real soon. Take care,
Thanks,
everyone.
team.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks for having me. Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks very much for watching. If you enjoyed this content, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and maybe consider watching one of my other videos. Bunnies up!